Alright, this is Chat UTD, the 6th of February, an important day in the history of Manchester United, the anniversary of the Munich Air crash, which for me is the most significant thing in the club's history. And this is always a date that is quite special, very special. And I think a day to, of course, remember the people that passed away in the disaster and after the disaster, but also a day to celebrate what that team were, recognise their amazing achievements. Sir Matt Busby pioneered the youth system at United. We had tens of thousands of people going to Old Trafford to watch youth cup games. Around that era, that was just unheard of. He then promoted them all, pretty much, to the first team in one foul swoop. And they proceeded to win league titles, and they became the first English team to play in Europe. Again, another pioneering idea from the manager, in the face of opposition from the powers that be. The brand of football was expressive, free, beautiful, from what I hear and what I see from grainy footage. They played what became the United way. And I think it's a day to celebrate that as well. It's also a day for me to look at the legacy they left, and also the incredible reaction and response from the club in a moment of extreme adversity. They showed an unbelievable resilience and courage as a club, and rose from the ashes essentially to become this juggernaut when it nearly folded. And I always think, on days like today, I always think about Bobby Charlton, who within a month was playing, about Bill Fowkes, who I think also was playing within a month, about Harry Gregg, who was playing within a month and had the courage to go back into a burning wreckage to rescue people, and always downplayed it for his whole life. I think of Jimmy Murphy, without whom the club probably wouldn't have carried on. They were close to folding, we were close to folding as a club, and he said, "Over my dead body." And of course, Sir Matt Busby, who was read his last rites literally on his deathbed, and a few months later led the team out in the FA Cup final, rebuilt a team, and within 10 years we were the first English team to win the European Cup. So it's a day to talk about that. When I was a kid, growing up in the 80s, going to watch United, my dad never really educated me on Munich. He didn't really talk about it. I taught myself about it. And it was always something that I felt very connected to. I felt very connected to that team. I felt like they were the guardian angels of the club. And I always thought that the players that were playing at that time, even though I was a young kid, are playing in honour of those ones that passed away. That they had pioneered it, the way United play, and the legacy was, you must try and do right. You must try and play a certain type of football in honour of those players that passed away. Then as I became a teenager, in my late teens, I started to go to away games. A massive trigger for me was if someone called me a Munich. If someone called me a Munich, it was on, because I felt very protective of that team, defensive of them. And even now, especially now, when I read that poem the night before Christmas, but the United version, when Sir Matt Busby as a ghost almost comes back to Old Trafford and the team go out and play, oh man, it gets me every time. It gets me every time, and I believe more than ever that whatever Manchester United do should always be in honour of them, and should always be a tip of a hat to them for as long as this club exists, because the modern day Manchester United is shaped for me by Munich. and it's a very important day today. There's been services at Old Trafford today, rightly so, as there always is, with key figures from the club attending, and I think long may that continue. The people that were directly involved or have that direct connection with Munich are becoming fewer and far between, because it was 68 years ago. It's a long time ago, but those people are moving, passing on. But we've got to keep that as a sacred part of the calendar every year, and I tell my kids about it, and keep it alive, keep it fresh, because, as I say, they're our guardian angels. When you play for Man United, you put that shirt on in honour of them. And tomorrow we'll play Tottenham, and there'll be more commemoration, there'll be more tributes, I'm sure. And I think it's good that we've got someone like Michael Carrick, who completely understands the fabric of the club, and said this week that as soon as he walked through the door, you start to understand the history. And Ferguson was big on talking about Munich and making sure that everyone knew what a significant event it was, and the legacy that it left, and the legacy the recovery from it left as well. So I think it's good we've got a person in the dugout tomorrow that on the touchline that is familiar with all of that, because it can be a really, especially when it's so close to the anniversary, it can be quite obviously an emotive day when you're trying to win a football match. So it's good we've got Michael Carrick there tomorrow. Moving on, in terms of the game tomorrow, Tottenham, lads, come on, it's Tottenham. When Tottenham were good or decent, when they were finishing in the top 4, 5, 6 under Redknapp, Pochettino, when they had good teams, we always beat them. It was never a problem. Home and away, we beat Tottenham. Hence the term, lads, it's Tottenham. But this last couple of years, when they've been absolutely rubbish, we've got a really bad record against them. I'm a touch nervous about tomorrow. I don't know. I feel like I should be coming into it confident, but there's an uneasy feeling about tomorrow. I'm not too sure why. They're not a good team. And of the 4 games that we'll have played after tomorrow so far, coming into it, it's the one that we're the biggest favourites in. That's probably why I'm uneasy about it, to be honest, because these are the types of games where we get a bit of a comeuppance. And they're not that bad, Tottenham. They've got goals in them. They've got a decent away record. They drew with us 2-2 earlier in the season. But if I take away that fear, common sense dictates we should win this game. And if we can win the game, it's 4 wins in a row. I don't remember the last time United won 4 games in a row. It's probably in Erik ten Hag's first season, I would guess. And you start to really get some momentum when you win 4 in a row, no matter who you've played in that 4-game sequence. So I think you probably go with the same team that started against Fulham. I think that makes sense to do that. You're not dropping Cunha and Boomer or Ahmad, so Seshko's probably going to have to wait for his turn, but if he can come on and do the business like he did last week, then great. So yeah, we're favourites, but as I say, I've just got an uneasy feeling about it. On to sort of other news, there's talk that Mainoo is in contract talks with United, but there's also talk that he wants 150 grand a week. I personally don't think he's worth 150 grand a week. I believe he's on something like 50 at the moment. I think he swam the channel if he gets 100, if I'm honest, but if you double your salary at 19, 20 years old with not a great amount of evidence that you're going to be a superstar, sort of, I know that a lot of people think he is. I think you've done really well to get 100 grand a week. He's not done enough in the game for me. He's a player that has had numerous injuries that have been pretty significant and kept him out for a while. He's had periods where he's looked potentially pretty special. He's showed moments certainly where he's looked special. And he's had some periods of inconsistency, and that's completely normal for a young player. But it's also normal for a young player not to be on 150 grand a week. He doesn't warrant that. And I think we can be walking into murky waters here that we've walked in before, and giving someone too much too soon. And if he kicks off about it and he wants 150 and he insists on that, see if he can get it elsewhere. I don't think anyone's giving him 150 grand a week. And let's see how much he loves United, because 100 grand a week is a hell of a salary for a lad who's 19 or 20 years old. And maybe put something in that says we review it again after a year. Let's see if he can stay in the team. Let's see if he can stay consistent. Let's see if he can stay injury free. Let's see if in the summer, when we buy hopefully a decent midfielder, you can connect and make a partnership with them, and you really become the focal point of our midfield. If you can show all that over a period of time, then 150 grand a week's fair. It's not now. You haven't done any of that yet. I won't be giving him 150 grand a week. On another player who's subject to contract talk at the moment, Harry Maguire. I think he's on 190 grand a week, Maguire, and his contract runs out in the summer. As yet, he's not signed one. I've heard he's prepared to look at flexible terms for his next contract, where he'd take obviously a reduced wage. My thoughts on Maguire are, if we had a board, much like with Michael Carrick maybe becoming the next manager, if we had a board that was absolutely hell-bent on success, that was about to plough loads of money into the team to go for a title tilt next season, was obsessed with winning, I would say, I'd say maybe Maguire's had his time at United. He's running out of contract. Let's use that as an opportunity to let him go and wish him all the best. And also, I think if we had that board I'm talking about, I would say that Michael Carrick might, if he keeps doing so well, might deserve an interview, but probably you go down a different route. But we haven't got a different board. We've got this board. So that's why I think for Michael Carrick, it makes a lot of sense. Regarding Michael Carrick, I think it makes a lot of sense for us to probably appoint him, especially if we get into Europe under him. And I think with Maguire, it makes sense for us to keep him on a short-term contract, maybe a rolling year contract or something like that, because I look at the squad and I look at Maguire and I think, first of all, he's a very good player, and secondly, I think he's a bit of a throwback, Maguire. He doesn't strike me as being like a modern day football player. He's not, I suspect he's from a really sound, well-grounded, down-to-earth background. I think he probably turns up every day and holds high standards. He's got good habits, consistent, and he's a leader. And we're not flush with players like that. So I think he's a good person to have around, and I also think he's a good player. And I actually think at the moment, without De Ligt, I think we're a much better team with Maguire in it, with De Ligt being injured. I must admit with Maguire, when he came in, I expected this physically dominant, bullish beast that would bully centre forwards, never lose out on any physical duels. Knew he wasn't very quick, but I knew also he's an intelligent player who can make up for that by his positional sense, carry the ball out from the back and do good stuff with the ball, weigh in with his fair share of goals, and be quite an aggressive presence at the back. And I must say, for me personally, in the first 3 years, I just didn't see that at all. I didn't get it. I thought he was far too passive, and he didn't do any of the stuff I just mentioned, in my opinion. And I think about 3 years ago, West Ham came in for him, and I'm sure they offered 35 million. And I don't know if it was him that turned it down or it was United that turned it down, but I think he should have gone. But this last 3 years, he has showed incredible resilience. He is very quietly, very calmly, just when he's got his chance, he's taken it. And he's been brilliant for me. And he's been all the things I just mentioned that I thought he was, and a bit more. I think he's been excellent. The injuries are a concern. He's picking up more injuries. This season, he's only started 8 games. 13, he's played in 13 games, but he's only started 8. I mean, I'm quite surprised by that. But then I looked at last year, and I don't know if this is right, but apparently last year he played 39 games. So if he can stay fit, and let's hope he can, if he stays fit for the rest of this season, maybe he plays another 10 games or so, something like that, 10 or 11 games. On top of 39 games last season, that's probably around, with the games he's already played this season, 60 odd games in 2 seasons, which for a 33-year-old, which he will turn 33 quite soon, that's about right. But the injury thing is something that we need to look at, because I hear people say, he's 33, time waits for no man. You're going to get knocks, you're going to get injuries. He plays in a position where he puts himself on the line, etc. I'm not having that. As a football player, 33 now is not old, it's young. And there is so much medical science, data, technology, information, that if there's weak parts of your body and it keeps breaking down, it's really quite easy when you've got experts in the room to find out why that's happening, and you can change things to make sure it doesn't happen anymore. So you would change his training regimen, you would change his preparation, his recovery, the weights he's lifting. There's so much you can do if you've got the ingenuity to do it. And that's not just football players, that's people in general you can do that with. But that United should have the best of everything in that regard. And find a way to give him a bespoke package so that he stays fit. And I'm not saying he should stay and be a first teamer game in, game out, but he should certainly be around the squad. Because we're not going to go and spend 50 million on a centre-back in the summer, because we need 2 centre midfield players, a left winger, 2 full-backs, a striker. We need all different positions covering. And we've got 5 centre-backs, including Maguire, at the club, so we're not going to do that. So I'd keep him. This is probably a little bit of a silly comparison in some respects, because I don't think he's as good as Steve Bruce, but I remember Steve Bruce going into the 93-94 season was 33 years old. And in my opinion, the 93-94 team is the best United team I've ever seen. I think they were one of the best teams in Europe that season, but the reason we didn't do particularly well in Europe was because of the foreigner rule. Now, Steve Bruce, as I say, 33 years old going into the season, turned 34 during the season, played pretty much every single Premier League game. He played in all the FA Cup games, and beyond the first couple of rounds, he played in the League Cup as well, and we got all the way to the final. We were 1 game off winning the domestic treble that year. Villa beat us in the League Cup final. He played in all those games. Now, by his own admission, Steve Bruce was, you saw the Titanic turn quicker than Steve Bruce. I don't think he particularly looked after himself. I think he liked a beer, he liked his food. And football in those days, there probably wasn't quite the same pace. In some ways, it was less physically demanding, but in terms of the knocks you took and the physicality of it, maybe it was more physically demanding. But Brucey was a big part of the team in 93-94, 94-95, 95-96, when he went into the season as a 35-year-old and turned 36 that season. And there's something of a bit of, not quite the same, but there's something of a Brucey in Maguire for me. So if Steve Bruce can continue his career 32 years ago in the condition he was in, Harry Maguire 32 years on, with all the modern medical science, as I say, that they've got now, should be able to do it. And I'd give him a year's contract. I'd give him a rolling contract and see how he does. You always want to leave the crowd wanting more. You don't want to stay another year and be absolutely toss. But I don't see signs of that. I see a player that I think can contribute something. I'm going to end the video a little bit differently today, because it is February the 6th, and as I said, it's a very significant day in Manchester United's history, and I'm going to do a minute's silence in honour of the Busby Babes, and welcome you to join me if you want to. And we will start that now. Nice one. If you could hear my kid shouting in the background, he's going to get a right bollocking. Glazers out.